Yeah, we're gonna budget. Yeah, we're gonna budget. Yeah. Hi everyone, my name is Jamie and today I'm going to talk about how I budget. I personally think the way I budget is pretty basic and pretty manual. I have tried those apps in the past where it connects with your bank account and it tries to automate the budgeting process for you. But personally, I found that I hated those apps. It didn't work for me at all. So for budgeting, I really stick to my Excel spreadsheet and I found that it really works for me. Best of all, I actually enjoy it and it doesn't make budgeting a daunting task at all. I'll start off with how I sort my money when I get paid, and then I'll round off the video with some tips. I get paid on a fortnightly basis and I've set up my salary so it's paid directly into my general savings account. I've got my spreadsheet open up here and this is actually what my spreadsheet looks like, and I dedicate a page of the spreadsheet to each month. As I get paid on a fortnightly basis, that is how I budget. So here I'm going to talk through an example fortnight. So the first green row is my salary. Then a portion of my salary goes into my rent and bills account. So as I pay my rent monthly, I just divide that figure by 2 and that's the figure I input into this field. And then I calculate what I need to set aside for my utilities and bills fund every fortnight. It is quite easy to calculate because I have fixed fees for my phone bill, my internet bill, my health insurance, and my car insurance. And I put aside a pretty generous amount for my gas, my electricity, and my water bills. And this section is where I also include all of my subscriptions, and I label them as luxuries because it forces me to think of them as not fixed fees. So this includes my Apple iCloud storage, my Google storage, my Stan subscription, my Audible subscription, and my micro investing app fee. I just add up all of those figures and that is the amount I set aside for my bills fund. Then I have a row for my savings goal, and this is for my general savings account. So there's no real purpose. It's really just me continuing to build my emergency fund. The next row is how much I put aside for my holiday fund. Pre-COVID, I was actually saving up for a trip to Japan. I calculated around how much I wanted to save up for that trip. And then I divided that amount by the number of fortnights between that present moment and my expected trip. It was easy to calculate how much I needed to set aside each fortnight to be able to hit that goal. So I would suggest that approach if your money goals are a bit more time sensitive. Next, if you watched my video on how I manage money, you'll know that I'm saving up for my wedding even though I'm not engaged yet, because I think it's a practical move for me and I know I'll need some time to save up for this wedding. I have a dedicated wedding account and that's the row indicating how much I'm setting aside. Focusing on this discretionary spending account, I know that other people might feel comfortable at this stage to not really track anymore. Since you've already set aside so much money for all your different financial goals and for your savings, you might not feel the need to track any further. But I'm definitely the kind of person who tracks every dollar I spend.
Every dollar I spend. Every dollar I spend.
I know it's nuts. I know it might sound crazy to some people, but it would actually stress me out a lot more if I wasn't doing that rather than the other way around. So it's really what works for you. In this everyday discretionary spending category, I have subcategories for groceries and chemist, entertainment and miscellaneous, which is the category for shopping or when I buy books, and eating out, which is my favorite hobby, let's be real. After all of those different funds that I've put money towards, I find those are the 3 categories I really need for my everyday account because that is really what I spend the rest of my money on. I'm actually really flexible with this part because I don't set limits on these subcategories. I just have a little field in my spreadsheet which acts as this live tracker, so I always know how much I have to spend for the fortnight. Usually I will check into my spreadsheet and input how much I've been spending every 3 days. So I'll know how I'm going along with the fortnight, if I need to cut back on things. This spreadsheet check-in only takes 5 minutes. Now, an account that doesn't appear in my budget is my splurge account, which has definitely been a new development. I mentioned in a previous video that I didn't have a splurge account because I was so focused on my long-term financial goals that I didn't really feel the need for one, and that is definitely still true. I don't actually set aside a fixed amount for my splurge account. Instead, what I do is that if I have a little money left over from a fortnight where I've been particularly frugal, I will set aside that remaining balance and put it into my splurge account. So I also put money towards that splurge account when I receive extra income. So for example, when I sell old items on Facebook Marketplace, I will put that money into my splurge account. I am just finding this to be a neater approach. I haven't splurged yet, but it's nice to know that there is some money set aside if I want to treat myself. Moving on to some general tips. My first tip is to automate. I will say a huge part of the reason why I find budgeting so easy is because I've basically automated everything I could automate. My transfers from my general savings account to my rent and bills account, my wedding fund, my holiday fund, my everyday account, that's all automated to happen on the same day that I receive my salary. When I get paid on that fortnightly basis, it feels like the next minute all that money has been sorted out into the different accounts. It only takes a few minutes to set up those recurring payments, but saves you so much effort and time in the future. All of my bills that I mentioned are also directly debited out of my account. I've never been hit with a late payment fee. So tip number 2 is that I think of those transfers as fixed transfers. What I mean by that is that once I've set aside my money, for example, towards my holiday fund, I'm not taking that money back out when I want to buy a new dress, for example. Once that money is put towards a goal, it is staying there. I know it might be tempting to take a little money out here and there, but I think it really slows down the process of achieving your financial goals. Tip number 3 is to remember that it's all an ongoing process and it's going to involve a little bit of trial and error to figure out what works for you. As I mentioned, I kind of hate all of those apps that try to automate your budgeting for you. They just don't work for me, and I'm pretty old school with my money. I recognize that. I feel like I needed to experiment with those apps to really figure out what works for me. And I have tinkered around with my spreadsheet so many different times. And I'm always assessing and reflecting on whether things need to be adjusted. For example, because we're living in COVID times and we're not really traveling at the moment, I've actually reduced the amount I'm setting aside for my holiday fund. I used to also previously cap the subcategories in my discretionary everyday spending account. So for example, I would limit the amount I would spend on groceries every fortnight, but I found that it was a whole level of rigid that was not for me. I think that once you become more familiar with your spending habits, you'll intuitively know around how much you spend each fortnight, and you might not feel like you need to cap those further amounts. So I think once you've created your spreadsheet or maybe found an app that works for you, it's always a good idea to check in and see whether your current system is working for you. Finally, I will mention that I bank with ING. I always thought that it would be a really daunting task to transfer from my childhood bank, which was Commonwealth Bank, to ING, but it really was not a daunting process at all. I think it's a lot easier than you expect. And I'm really glad I did, because I think ING, at the moment at least, it affords all of the flexibility that I need to be able to set up all those different accounts. I don't pay any fees when I make transfers. So perhaps when you're assessing whether your current system works for you, you might want to consider whether your bank is working for you as well. So I really hope that you enjoyed this video and found it useful. As you can probably tell, I love talking about money and budgeting. So please let me know if you'd like to see more of this content. And thank you so much for watching. I really appreciate it. Don't forget to like and subscribe if you did. It really supports my channel. Bye!